All right, perfect. Welcome everyone. This is your, what month is it? January Lunch and Learn. So these sessions happen once a month with either Jody LaPlay or myself, and we are talking about Google all year. So this particular session is on Google shared folders, and you can catch these sessions every second Wednesday. Is that right, Jody? Third Wednesday?
Third Wednesday.
And then we have first Friday Fast 15s on the first Friday of every month, of course, thusly named. So today's session is on Google shared folders, and last month, our December Lunch and Learn was on shared drives. And at the first Friday in February, Jody will kind of package this information all together, but we wanted to keep them separate for now, just so they're distinct and we can talk about the features of each. And then hopefully by the time we wrap up the shared folder and shared drive conversations in February, you'll know, at least have a feel for which tool to use for which job. So it's not that you don't, you have to know right off the bat, but if you know the features of each and you give it a shot, hopefully it works for you. And if not, it's okay to switch. So a little clarity here. I'm going to run through a slide deck and then we're going to review the navigation in shared drives so that has a little more clarity around it and you know where to find these. So in shared folders, which are old, they work very much like Google Docs. So the sharing in Google Docs mirrors the sharing in folders. There are a few caveats to the way that these work. There we go. Okay. So shared folders, the content in a shared folder and the shared folder itself is owned by an individual person. And the benefit of that is that the permissions on the folder can be different than the permissions on the documents inside of that folder. So I would say, and we'll go over this a little bit later, you'd want to share a folder broadly and then change the permissions for each individual thing according to what people in that folder need access to. Or you can publicly share them and just distribute links so that people can get them. And then you're just using that shared folder as an organizational structure for yourself or maybe for a team that's working on the contents. So you can move content around, you can move it in and out of the shared folder. It's extremely flexible and great for project management. So there are a couple of things to know about shared folders. I already talked about this. The documents, the sharing permissions in a document within a folder can override the sharing permissions on the folder itself. So the implications here are that you, just as I said, if you share a folder broadly with each file inside of that folder, you can be more specific about what the needs might be. And then files in a shared folder can be edited by anybody. So if you share them with editing rights outside of your organization, people can, regionally or statewide or even, anywhere in the world can edit that particular file. They can add files to these folders. It's pretty wide open. So they're, like I said earlier, very flexible, which is nice for all kinds of project management. And then anyone can create a shared folder and it can be shared anywhere else. So I don't know how many times I'm going to say this, but extremely flexible. Your shared folders are searchable. So when you open, and we'll go over this when I'm back in Drive and doing the navigation part, but the search bar at the top, when you put a search term in there, your shared folders are also searched, which isn't always the case with other parts of Google Drive. So it's nice because it'll search both. When you search in that bar, it searches both the content within documents and folders and also the names of those, the titles of each document. And then when you do share a folder, if you're in the folder when you create a new file, it is automatically saved into that folder. And actually, I don't know if this is still true. Google used to warn you, hey, you're creating this folder and whoever has access to this, or you're creating this file, whoever has access to this folder will also have access to this file. But that's just something to be aware of. If you drag files out of a shared folder, then Google will warn you, hey, the people that have access to this folder will no longer have access to this file. Is that okay? And then it forces you to click OK. Also, if you drag a file into a shared folder, it will open up sharing to whoever has access to that folder, even if they didn't have access to that file before. So those are all things to be aware of. And I will, after this presentation, I will link the YouTube video that talks about the safest way to share folders and files, and safety being if there is any personally identifiable information within those files, you'll want to be careful about how you share them. So something with a social security number, you wouldn't want to be shared publicly, or even where it's shared with anyone with a link. You want to be much more careful about it than that. So staff information, student information, and all the things that fall into those categories for FERPA, COPPA, all the federal guidelines, and then Oregon has some specifically too. So there's a YouTube video on that that's quick to consume and current. So one of the other things about shared folders is that you can, and we'll go through navigation, you can go directly to a folder just by navigating through your Google Drive. You can also, if somebody has shared a file or a folder with you, it will show up in that part of the navigation. Something to be aware of is that if you want more direct access to a folder that's been shared with you, you can add it to your My Drive. And that can be done at the top of the folder. There are some little controls there, or you can just right click on the folder in the navigation and tell Google to add it to your My Drive. So it just gives you a little better access to it. So those are the big things. Any questions from the audience at all? So far, just unmute yourself. Cool. All right. So I'm going to get out of this slide deck. And so I'm still screen sharing. Here's my Drive and my Google Drive. And the folders over here at the left are all the ways to navigate through each of these things. So we've gone over some of this navigation in past sessions, but the big ones for today are when you sort of expand your My Drive, you've got all of your folders in here. I can tell which of these folders are shared folders because they have this little person, I guess, right here. So I know that this one's been shared with people. If I wanted to see who it's been shared with, I would right click and then I would go to share here. That's just one way to do that. And then this one doesn't have anyone shared. It doesn't have that little person. So I can tell just by with a glance which of these are shared folders and which are just mine. And then once again, let's see, I'm going to actually collapse this. I think it'll be easier to see them all at one time. So those are the folders that I've created and shared. And then the shared with me also probably has some folders in it. And in Google Drive, automatically your folders show up at the top. So these are the folders that have been shared with me directly. And any one of these, I can add a shortcut to Drive here. So it just makes it a little easier to navigate in this way, just depending on your work and communication flow. I can also star them. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I can also star them in this menu. I can do any number of things to make them more accessible. So when you search up here at the top, when you search in Drive, there are things that are included here and things that are outside of. So this searches the My Drive and the shared with me, but it doesn't search a shared drive. So that is something to be aware of. Also, when you create a shared folder and then you nest folders inside of that shared folder, oftentimes it's harder for Google to find the content in those nested folders. I don't know why that's true, but I have found it multiple times to be true. And then also when you nest folders inside of folders, it causes some issues when you start to change permissions on the files inside of that folder, or even the permissions for the whole folder. So I shouldn't say it causes problems. It just might take some time for those changes to be effective. So if you don't see those changes right away, just wait a little bit, and probably, I can't tell you what the timeline is, but sometimes it's just not an immediate thing, and it just takes some time to propagate. So that's something to be aware of. I try to avoid at this point doing any nesting of folders. I know it works for a lot of people, but searching for content here in this search bar has been way more effective for me than trying to organize things into folders. You would know that with the way that my drive works, but a lot of that is organization, so I can share those folders with other people. So I would say if you don't have to nest folders inside of folders, avoid that if you can. All right, do we have a question here? Oh yeah, okay. Thanks, Jody. That is the little icon that Jody just figured out, making sure that you know which folders are shared and which ones aren't. Okay, so I think those are the big things about shared folders. And if there aren't any questions, I'm gonna stop recording. Oh, go ahead, Emma.
So if I understand correctly, when you put a document in the shared folder, whoever has access to that shared folder does have access to the document.
Exactly.
I don't have to give them editing or commenting or viewing access. Is that correct?
Right, as long as you've shared the folder that way. So because it will have the same options on a folder as it does on a document, then as soon as that document's in that folder, they will have the same permissions that you put on the folder.
Same as the folder. Thank you.
You bet. And then you can change that by document inside, but yeah, it's automatic, which is great for project management. If you create the new document, Jody and I just walked through this as an example. We're working on a curriculum adoption for digital content, and it was great because anytime somebody added a new rubric or any of that to the whole process, they just put it right in the shared folder and everybody had what they needed. Okay, any other questions? Perfect.